Thank you very much, and good morning everyone, and welcome to Tuning In. So I'm Matt Payton, I'm Chief Executive of Radiocentre, a role that I was delighted and really privileged to take on just over a year ago. And in that time, a few people have said to me, whether I've enjoyed a bit of a honeymoon period in the new job. And I was reminded of that recently. I saw an interview, I don't know if you saw this, with a man called Ange Postecoglou, the new Tottenham Hotspur football manager, and he was asked a similar question. And his response was, look, I don't know what your honeymoon was like, but mine certainly was nothing like this. It was actually quite relaxing. And that struck a chord with me for some reason, because while the last year or so has been many things, I certainly wouldn't describe it as relaxing. In fact, it's been a real landmark year for Radiocentre and for commercial radio. Not only have we been celebrating 50 years since the first stations went on air, but we've also marked new milestones in audience, in revenues, and in shaping the future. And Radiocentre has been changing too, reflecting the focus of our members now beyond traditional radio. So I want to talk briefly this morning about some of those milestone moments of the past year, and what I think they mean and how this connects with the speakers and sessions that we've got coming up, before I then hand over to our brilliant host, Tyler, who'll be our host for today. So the first, and I guess the most obvious milestone that I did want to acknowledge is, of course, that 2023 is the 50th anniversary of commercial radio in the UK. And as many of you know, the first commercial stations, LBC and Capital, were launched in October 1973. I think this image is, I gather this image is a picture just taken just after 6 a.m. on the 8th of October 1973 when LBC first went on air. And we owe so much to those early pioneers who founded, ran and presented on those stations, as well as the stations that then followed across the country. Without them, I think it's true to say we simply wouldn't be here today. And we've had to think kind of long and hard about how we honour that legacy. Because while for some of us 50 perhaps doesn't seem that old, at least that's what I've been telling my colleagues since my last big birthday. But of course, we also have to acknowledge actually most of our audience wasn't even born when those first stations went on air. As a result, our main focus has been on celebrating the success of commercial radio and its growth and innovation over the years. And it is amazing to think how far we've come since those early days of highly regulated, full-service radio stations broadcasting to a captive local audience. We held a celebration in Parliament back in June to mark the 50th anniversary and reinforce this message of radio's success and its evolution with our political audience. And at that time, we published this new report called Stronger Than Ever, which looked at where we are today, where we aspire to be in future, and what needs to happen next. We also made some changes, which you might have noticed, to the look and feel of Radiocentre to reflect and update our communications as the voice of commercial radio. And while we're never complacent, there's a real confidence behind this stronger than ever message. It might sound a bit like wishful thinking, but it genuinely reflects the data on where we are as an industry, especially when you consider another milestone of record advertising revenues for commercial radio. As you can see, despite the extraordinary levels of competition and disruption, commercial radio has had an amazing run over the past 10 years or so, with revenues bouncing back strongly after the pandemic and reaching a new high of £740 million in 2022, with digital audio revenues also growing to a new record of £186 million. Of course, looking ahead, we know that the overall ad market remains under pressure, reflecting really what's going on in the broader economy. So that's one of the reasons why Radiocentre and the broader radio industry continues to support advertisers and commercial teams with effectiveness evidence, including new tools and insight for clients. We understand that planning media campaigns is an increasingly complex and data-driven exercise. So Radiocentre has been focused on providing new tools to help with this, including the award-winning Radio Planning Optimizer and the recently launched Audio Need States Navigator. And as you'd expect, broadcasters and commercial teams are also doing their bit And just to take one example, it was great to see the recent research from GTN, which highlighted the continuing power of radio in cars and in providing traffic and travel updates. And thinking about audiences more broadly, we also know that listening remains incredibly strong overall, hitting new milestones every quarter, so it seems. In live radio alone, commercial radio now reaches a record weekly audience of 39 million people, whilst its share versus the BBC, its share of listening time versus the BBC, has never been higher at 54.5%. Yet at the same time, we know that competition for listening is intensifying, with other types of audio like podcasts and music streaming growing in popularity all the time. But for advertisers who are considering the best use of audio, it's also worth remembering that radio represents by far the biggest proportion of commercially accessible audio hours. So what do I mean by that? Well, this is hours where you can actually buy advertising, including non-BBC podcasts, free streaming services, and commercial radio. With commercial radio accounting for 84% of these hours, you can see why it remains the centrepiece of those audio advertising campaigns that have the biggest impact. But as I say, there's no doubt the way people are listening is changing. In the case of live radio, we've seen a surge of online listening in recent years, and that's more than doubled, as you can see on here, since 2019, if you can see those numbers. And is also now at record levels, now accounting for 25% of all listening time, another milestone for this year. A figure that, by the way, is even higher in commercial radio. So what's been driving this? Well, we know there's a clear correlation between the rapid growth of online radio listening and the growth of smart speakers like the Amazon Echo. And we've only had official audience data on smart speakers since the start of last year. But as you can see from the lighter shade on this chart, it already accounts for the majority of online radio listening hours, generating more listening hours than mobile and other IP-connected platforms put together. And in some ways, this shifting listening, I guess, shouldn't really come as a great surprise to us. According to Radar Midas and other data from Ofcom, the vast majority of listening time on these devices, around 70% according to Radar, is to live radio. But this shift in behaviour creates both opportunities but also carries risks. For example, on the one hand, in many ways, radio's embraced the opportunities and the potential of partnerships with companies like Amazon, providing more choice and functionality for audiences, while looking at new ways that connected listening can help create more sophisticated advertising solutions, including more targeted and actionable ads. But there's also clear risks if radio becomes too reliant on third-party tech platforms to reach audiences, which is why we've been asking government to set ground rules on how radio is offered, accessed and commercialised in future. Now, we've still got a long way to go to achieve this, but earlier this year, following some intensive lobbying led by Radiocentre, the government published its draft media bill. And this includes specific powers to support radio's place on smart speakers and on voice assistants. And this also felt like another really big milestone in the battle to secure the future of UK radio online. We're now working to turn this draft bill into reality, and that's not going to be straightforward, especially given the limited amount of parliamentary time between now and the next general election in 2024. But the good news is politicians and civil servants, some of whom are here today, instinctively get it. They understand that UK radio is trusted by audiences and provides real public value day in, day out. And they don't want to lose that. They don't want to put it at risk. But we also know that passing a draft bill into legislation is going to be a marathon and not a sprint. So we're taking nothing for granted, and we're going to need to keep up the pressure on this over the course of the next year. The final landmark moment I just wanted to go back to and wanted to highlight for this year is actually a bit closer to home, but it also reflects some of the shifts that I've been describing. When I was appointed CEO last year, I said that we couldn't afford to stand still. We couldn't keep just telling the same story. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a good story, and I think we punch above our weight in terms of demonstrating the value of radio, and we've got a team of highly committed, talented and respected people. And I think our mission and strategic focus is also really clear. We're here to get industry influencers and decision makers to see radio differently by demonstrating effectiveness, highlighting innovation, and representing the sector. But in doing this, we wanted to make sure that we were fully reflecting all of the exciting changes happening in the world around us. So as part of our action plan report, we set out a formal change to Radiocentre's remit to represent and promote all forms of audio provided by commercial radio. So what does that mean in practice? Well, just look at some of our current, recent and future work. In particular, our thought leadership and research output, including our generation audio research, our audio need states navigator tool, and our new project with System 1 that we'll be revealing today. All of these are focused very clearly on radio, but in the context of the broader audio world. Similarly, our policy work, especially around the media bill, is all about securing radio's future online. While our clearance team also now offers advice on digital audio scripts, not just broadcast radio. And as for our marketing and events, well, let's just consider the agenda and sessions that we've got coming up today. You can access the full agenda, if you probably don't know already, on your name badge on the QR code. Hopefully you can see from that and from what we've got coming up that radio remains the core focus. It's at the heart of what we do and what our members do. What some people have described as the train that pulls the carriages. But now we're also reflecting the leading role of commercial radio in digital audio and podcasts and in considering creative opportunities across all audio. As a result, we've got a great lineup of speakers whose sessions will all relate in some way to our main strategic pillars, including creativity and effectiveness, evolution and innovation in audio, and the broader operating environment. And across the day, we'll be thinking about these issues both from the perspective of radio and audio more broadly, in keeping with our new remit. So that's just about it from me for now, a quick whistle-stop tour, but I'll be back at the end to provide a brief summing up and invite you to join us for a light lunch in the members bar later. But hopefully that's provided a useful overview of some of the big milestones for commercial radio this year, some perspective on what this means for the industry as a whole, and how it informs what we've got coming up this morning.